After filming Wrapped, Alex found it impossible to leave the character behind. He asked his agency for a leave of absence, snapped his SIM card in half, and drove to a small coastal town in Oregon to attempt a detox. He'd always considered himself brave, but he couldn't bring himself to confess his feelings to Julian. There were two insurmountable reasons. First, Alex was a nobody, a ghost in the industry, while Julian was a supernova. Second, Alex was a man and so was Julian. He had booked the rental for 2 months. With 26 days left until he had to return to Los Angeles, he and his assistant Leo were settling into a quiet routine. One afternoon, Leo approached him, phone in hand. He announced that Julian was trending online. A cold knot formed in Alex's stomach. Leo asked if he wanted to see. Alex reflexively pushed the phone away. He told Leo to watch it somewhere else, that he didn't want to see. But Leo insisted, explaining that Julian was saying good things about him. Alex's voice sharpened. He warned Leo to stop, reminding him exactly why they had fled to this remote corner of the country. Leo sighed, his shoulders slumping. He said it was precisely because he knew that he wanted Alex to see. He pointed out Alex's monotonous days of reading and staring at the ocean, worried that his lovesickness was curdling into something worse. He suggested Alex should just take the plunge and confess. If it worked out, great. If not, the sharp shock of rejection might be the cure he needed. Alex rolled his eyes. He remarked that Julian was as straight as the weathered telephone poles lining the coast highway, and he had no desire to get himself humiliated. He recalled Julian's strength, the way he'd effortlessly overpowered him during their fight scenes. The thought triggered a vivid memory from the set. He was pressed against a desk, both of his wrists pinned by one of Julian's hands, while the other methodically undid the buttons of his shirt. Alex shook his head violently, trying to dislodge the image. He couldn't think about it. Not at all. Frustrated, he grabbed a beer from the cooler and drained it. He looked over at Leo, who was still engrossed in the clip, and asked what Julian had said about him. Leo offered the phone again, but Alex closed his eyes, refusing. He couldn't risk seeing Julian's face. One look would undo all his progress. Julian's face was a perfect, devastating blueprint of everything Alex had ever found beautiful. If Julian wasn't a household name, Alex would have suspected the entire production was an elaborate trap designed just for him. Julian had been the one to personally select him for the role, pulling his name from a list of over 100 actors. From that moment, Alex had been lost. Leo simply turned up the volume. An interviewer's voice filled the small cottage, asking Julian about a uniquely gifted actor he'd recently encountered. Julian's low, warm laugh echoed from the phone's speakers. He said the actor's name was Alex, describing him as young but possessing an incredible depth and a willingness to be completely vulnerable for the role. He said he really liked him. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He told himself not to fall for it. It was just an act. Julian's words, his gaze, he had a way of making everyone feel like they were the center of the universe. It was a professional skill, not a confession. To believe otherwise was to invite ruin. The interviewer noted that their show would be airing soon, and Julian encouraged everyone to watch, praising Alex's performance and his command of physical storytelling. He added that Alex had a great personality. The interviewer laughed, remarking on how fond Julian truly seemed of him. Julian chuckled softly and agreed, noting that since Alex played his romantic partner, audiences would fall in love with him too. Alex squeezed his eyes shut, picturing the expression Julian would have while saying that. The slight curve of his lips, the light in his eyes that seemed to pull you in. It was the same expression he'd worn on the last day of shooting. He had held Alex's hand a moment too long, telling him to keep in touch, to call him anytime. Alex remembered how he'd smiled back, his own eyes crinkling, and promised he would. The very next day, he destroyed his SIM card and locked his phone in a safe that he gave to Leo for keeping. He thought 2 months would be enough. He was wrong. The day he was scheduled to return, he got a new SIM card. Leo informed him that his agent, Chloe, wanted to see him immediately. He took a cab to the agency. When he pushed open the conference room door, his eyes met Julian's. A sharp gasp caught in his throat, turning into a painful cough. Chloe rushed over, patting him on the back. For 3 minutes, Alex struggled to breathe, and for those entire 3 minutes, Julian just watched him. His face was a placid mask, devoid of the warmth and easy charm Alex remembered. He looked at Alex as if he were a complete stranger. A pang of hurt, sharp and unwelcome, shot through Alex's chest. He took a deep breath. Wasn't this what he wanted? For the affectionate gaze to be gone? For the illusion to be broken? Julian spoke, his voice cool and professional. He had heard Alex was back from his hiatus and came to discuss the studio's request. The director wanted them to come in for ADR. Alex's eyes widened. Julian explained that the director felt Alex's own voice was a better match for the character than a voice actor's and wanted him to re-record his lines. He then turned to Chloe, mentioning that the promotional tour would require coordination between their teams and they should stay in touch. Chloe, glancing at Alex, readily agreed, thanking Julian for coming all this way despite his busy schedule. Julian let out a short, humorless laugh. He acknowledged his schedule was packed, adding it was a shame how much of his effort had been a complete waste. Then he said he was leaving. Chloe smiled brightly and told Alex to walk Julian out. But as Alex rose, a ghost in his own body, Julian placed a hand on his shoulder and pressed him back into the chair. He said it wasn't necessary, that he could see himself out. He gave Alex's shoulder a brief, firm squeeze and then left, the door clicking shut behind him. So he had moved on. Of course he had. He was an award-winning actor, a professional. Alex forced down the ache in his heart and discussed the details with Chloe. That evening, back in his apartment, he slid the new SIM card into his phone. He logged into his messaging apps. There were no new notifications. He threw a pillow across the room with a cry of frustration. Cold. Heartless. After all the intensity on set, the way Julian had looked at him, for it all to mean nothing, it was infuriating. But what angered him most was his own weakness. Julian was fine, completely detached, while Alex was still trapped. The thought of having to see him again, to work with him in the close confines of a recording booth, made his entire body ache. As he was about to get in the shower, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Julian. It said that the vintage Lakers jersey he'd mentioned was finally in, and he would drop it off tomorrow. He told Alex to wait for him at home. Alex's hand trembled, and the phone slipped from his grasp, clattering onto the tile floor. How could he possibly move on when Julian was still being so kind? He gritted his teeth, picked up the phone, and replied that he wouldn't be home, that he had an early appointment. Julian's reply came instantly. "Oh, then I'll bring it over now." Alex gritted his teeth harder. He typed back that he would cancel his plans and wait for him in the morning. "I see," Julian replied. "Well, you just got back. You must be tired. Get some rest." Alex tossed his phone onto the bed and then threw himself down beside it. He felt like he was suffocating. He sent a desperate message to his best friend, Chris. "I'm back. Detox failed. Help me." 10 seconds later, Chris replied, "Are you sure you're not just in love with the character he played? Maybe you just like the persona from the show, not the real him." Alex froze. The idea struck him with the force of a revelation. It made sense. He opened his laptop, found the original novel the series was based on, and started reading. He fell in love with the protagonist all over again. But this time he repeated a mantra in his head. I love the character in the book. I love a fictional person. I am not in love with Julian. The next morning, Julian arrived with the jersey and a bag containing coffee and pastries from a cafe Alex liked. He explained that he'd called in favors from several friends to track down the rare jersey, which had just been mailed from overseas. After setting everything down, he reached out and gently smoothed Alex's hair. Alex fought the urge to pull away. He had just rolled out of bed, a mess of tangled hair and sleep-creased skin. He silently chanted his mantra. I love the character, not the actor. Julian checked his phone. He said he had to leave for the airport soon, that he'd be busy for a couple of days but would message when he had time. He told Alex to text him if he needed anything. Alex noted the early flight time. Julian smiled faintly, explaining that was why he'd wanted to bring the jersey by the previous night. He had to catch this flight to be at an event that evening. He repeated his instruction for Alex to message him, promising to reply as soon as he could. Alex kept his head down, but after a moment of internal struggle, a question escaped his lips. He asked why Julian hadn't messaged him before. I haven't messaged you? Julian looked genuinely confused. He asked to see Alex's phone. On instinct, Alex handed it over. Julian's thumb moved to the home button, unlocking it with his fingerprint out of habit. The screen lit up, and they both froze. The moment of shared shock was fleeting for Julian. His fingers began to swipe, navigating to the messaging app. He saw his own name pinned to the top of the conversation list. He tapped it. After a few seconds of scrolling, a humorless laugh escaped him. Alex, you're really something else. He handed the phone back, his fingers brushing Alex's. Then, he reached out and pinched Alex's earlobe, a gesture that was both playful and firm. Don't turn your phone off. Don't ignore my calls. And don't disappear again. Wait for my call tonight. He paused. My 691 messages died a wrongful death. They deserve justice. The familiar pinch, a gesture he'd grown accustomed to during filming, sent a jolt through him. This time, without the buffer of a character to hide behind, the heat that flooded his ear was instant and uncontrollable. He told himself it was just a sensitive nerve and involuntary reaction. By the time he processed Julian's words, the front door had already closed. 691 messages. Julian had messaged him. All those days he was gone. A giddy, irrepressible joy bubbled up inside him. He pressed his lips together, fighting a smile. Don't smile. Can't smile. I love the character, not Julian. Don't be happy. He left the apartment feeling like a new man, dressing with a care he hadn't felt in months. When Leo saw him, he remarked that Alex was practically glowing, a stark contrast to the despondent man he'd been babysitting on the coast. That afternoon, Alex had an audition. He spent the morning at a salon, getting his hair styled to better match the new character's description. At the casting office, before he could even introduce himself, a girl dressed in a fluffy sweater bounced up to him. She exclaimed that she was seeing him in person and extended a hand. Alex, hi. I'm Jenna, the author of the original book. The show you did with Julian? I wrote that one too. Alex quickly shook her hand. Jenna, it's an honor. I didn't expect to see you at the audition. Yeah, I missed your first one because of classes, she said cheerfully. But now it's summer break, so I can be here to supervise. It helped that my brother was keeping an eye on things. I trusted him to pick the right person, and I'm so glad he chose you. Processing this new information, Alex asked the obvious question. Your brother? Jenna nodded. Yeah. Julian. My actual brother. Alex nodded slowly. That explained why Julian had casting approval. It was a family business. Jenna beamed, revealing 2 small dimples. She told him his performance was excellent and that she'd be at the ADR sessions in a few days. Alex replied modestly that his acting was nowhere near Julian's level, that he still had much to learn. Jenna made a dismissive sound. Please. The main character in that book was based on my brother. The descriptions, the personality, all of it. That's just him. He didn't have to act. He could just sit there and be the character. Don't waste your praise on him. A bomb went off in Alex's head. Julian was the prototype. His entire strategy, his carefully constructed mantra, I love the character, not the actor, was a lie. He felt a scorching blush creep up his neck and over his face. He covered his face with his hands and crouched down on the floor. Was there no escaping Julian's orbit? Jenna stared down at him, her expression baffled. Alex, what are you doing? Seeing the deep red of his face and ears, she suddenly yelped, asking if he had low blood sugar. She fumbled in her pocket, produced a hard candy, tore off the wrapper, and popped it into his mouth. He stood up, the candy clutched between his teeth, and cleared his throat, assuring her he was fine. She looked at him with concern and asked which role he was auditioning for. He told her it was for the male supporting role, the heroine's best friend. Jenna patted her chest in relief. She said it was a good thing he wasn't trying for the lead, because he probably wouldn't have gotten it. The lead role was very physical, with many fight scenes, and his delicate constitution wouldn't have held up. If he'd gotten hurt, she explained, her brother would have held her responsible. She glanced at her watch and told him to go in, saying she had to go pick someone up. After the audition, Alex found an empty chair in the waiting area and scrolled through his phone. Julian was attending some awards ceremony. The hashtag was already trending. He clicked through photos and videos. Julian looked fresh tonight, his makeup minimal. In one series of photos, he was resting his chin on his hand, his fingers forming different numbers. A 6, a 9, a 1. Alex felt his face grow warm again. Was that a signal for him? A moment later, a new hashtag began to trend, Julian hand signs, followed by a date, September 16th, Tanya Reid's birthday. Underneath, a caption read, My ship is real. Alex felt a familiar pang of disappointment. Soon after, he was notified that he'd gotten the supporting role. For an actor of his status, it was a huge win. He suspected Jenna had put in a good word for him and made a mental note to take her out for a thank you dinner. At 10:30 that night, as he was getting ready for bed, his phone lit up with an incoming video call. He picked up the shirt he'd just taken off, hesitated, then tossed it back on the sofa before accepting the call. Julian's face appeared, looking annoyed. He said he wanted to blow up whichever gossip site started the rumor about him and Tanya Reid. He said people were already planning their wedding online. He was removing his makeup and not looking directly at the camera. Alex propped his phone up on the bathroom counter, keeping his upper body in frame, and started brushing his teeth. Julian continued talking, then stopped abruptly. Alex glanced at the screen. Julian had finished washing his face, and water was still dripping from his jaw. He was staring intently at Alex. Alex feigned nonchalance. What are you staring at? Spit it out. I need to take a shower. Oh, Julian said, snapping out of it. About those messages. I didn't delete them, they're all there. Do you want me to screenshot them for you, one by one? Or should I just wait until I fly back tomorrow and show you in person? Alex rinsed his mouth. I'm going to bed. I don't want to see them tonight. Just come to my place when you get back. He picked up the phone, angling it slightly higher. But I'm sleeping in tomorrow, so I won't be answering the door. You'll have to let yourself in. The code is 950112. Through the screen, Julian's eyes narrowed. The code was his birthday. Alex didn't care. He turned on the shower head. I'm showering now. Hanging up. Julian coughed a few times, then managed a quiet okay. Alex hadn't expected Julian to take a red-eye flight. The sound of his front door opening came at 5:30 in the morning. He was deep in a comfortable sleep when he felt someone slide into his bed. He mumbled, starting to wake up, but Julian wrapped an arm around him from behind. Go back to sleep, he whispered. It's okay. It was a habit formed on set. Alex had always felt incredibly safe sleeping in Julian's arms. Maybe it was his height, his broad shoulders. The feeling of being completely enveloped was deeply comforting. When Julian's leg came to rest over his, Alex sighed contentedly and slipped back into unconsciousness. 10 in the morning, his alarm went off. He woke up feeling a heavy weight on his body. For a moment, he thought he was having a nightmare, but then he saw the arm wrapped around his waist, the hand that had slipped under his pajama shirt, and the heavy leg draped over his own. He knew what had happened. He tried to shift, but even in sleep, Julian's grip tightened, pulling their bodies flush together. Julian sleepily kissed the spot behind his ear and murmured, "Don't move." Alex froze, terrified of shifting and brushing against something he shouldn't. The hand on his stomach was warm, and he held his breath, his body tensing until his abs were tight. A tingling sensation spread from his stomach through his limbs. He was starting to sweat. He carefully tried to pry Julian's fingers away. Thankfully, in his sleep, Julian's grip wasn't as strong. He managed to break free for a second, but just as he started to inch away, Julian pulled him back. "What time is it?" Julian's voice was lazy with sleep. 10, Alex replied, his own voice tight. "If you're not busy, sleep a little longer with me. I'm exhausted. It was a long flight." With that, Julian shifted again, turning Alex onto his back and wrapping him in a firm embrace. Alex was pressed against his chest. He could see the dark circles under Julian's eyes were pronounced. He stopped struggling. Resigning himself, he rested his forehead against Julian's chest, found a comfortable position, and fell back asleep. The next time he woke, he opened his eyes and found himself staring directly into Julian's. He had no idea how long Julian had been awake, just watching him. With a sudden push, Alex scrambled out of his embrace. "Your ears are so red," Julian said with a laugh. He reached over, picked up his own phone from the nightstand, and held it out to Alex. "The records don't lie. Have a look. The app doesn't deliver messages if you're logged out for too long. You haven't logged in since we wrapped. Have you?" Alex took the phone without answering. "What's the password?" he asked, his voice muffled. "I never deleted your fingerprint." Alex's hand trembled as he pressed his thumb to the sensor. It unlocked. He opened the messaging app and saw his own chat, pinned to the top. He tapped it. A dense wall of messages appeared, ending 5 days before he returned from his detox. He scrolled all the way up to the day filming had ended. Happy wrap. Too many people around earlier to say it properly. Got anything planned for the next few weeks? Are you busy? What's wrong? Why aren't you answering? Your phone is off. Did you block me? Alex, where are you? I contacted your assistant. He said you're on a remote island for a closed shoot, and that you'll contact me when you're done. The messages that followed were a daily chronicle of Julian's life, reports of his schedule mixed with occasional reminiscences of their time on set. As Alex read, his heart began to ache. So, he wasn't the only one who couldn't let go. The very last message, sent just days ago, was a simple, desperate question. Alex, do you hate me for pulling you into this project? I don't hate you, Alex whispered. He heard Julian chuckle. Julian pulled him closer. You have no idea. After I sent that last message and still got nothing back, I completely fell apart. I spent days drinking, couldn't sleep a wink. It was hell. Then I heard you were coming back to the agency. I used the ADR as an excuse to see you. You know, I didn't have to come to your agency in person for something like that. Julian's voice was low and earnest. The moment I saw you, I knew I wasn't the only one. You'd lost so much weight. I'd spent months on set making sure you ate well, and it was all gone. I was so angry. I saw your expression and knew you'd been trying to detox. You're so ruthless. I was in despair, ready to give up. But I still had that jersey I got for you, and I wanted to see you one last time. So I came to your apartment. I knew you wouldn't message me, so I deliberately told you to text me if you needed anything. I thought that would be the end of it. But then you said what you said, and I felt like I was coming back to life. Alex tried to remember what happened that day. What did I say? You asked me why I hadn't messaged you. He remembered the question, how it had slipped out after he tried so hard to hold it in. That doesn't prove anything, he said stubbornly. Julian kissed his forehead. Who on earth created you? You're adorable. By asking that question, you showed that you cared whether I had contacted you or not. Thank God you asked. Otherwise, we would have been finished. He continued, last night, with all those rumors trending, I wanted to see your reaction, so I video called you. Alex put a hand over Julian's mouth. We don't need to rehash that part. Julian laughed and kissed his palm. Alex snatched his hand away. I just didn't expect you to be so unfazed by the rumors, and to give me so many benefits. And then you gave me your door code. That's when I knew. We were a done deal. Alex turned away, unwilling to look at him, but his ears were burning. Alex, Julian said softly. What are we now? Alex covered his ears, refusing to listen. Julian kissed the shell of his ear. Tell me, what are we? Alex jabbed an elbow into his stomach, broke free from his hold, and vaulted off the bed. Your competition. From now on, it's war. That Best Actor award is mine next year. He grabbed the duvet, threw it over Julian's head, and started playfully pummeling him. You old fox. It's your fault I fell this hard. You deserve this. After the beating, Julian made him lunch, then grabbed a suitcase and rushed off to the airport. It was only then that Alex learned he had another awards ceremony to attend. He was supposed to have flown there directly the previous night. The video call had been to let Alex know he'd be gone a few more days. But Alex's response had been an unexpected explosion of hope, and Julian couldn't wait. He'd booked the first flight back just to see him. As he was leaving, he pressed Alex again about their relationship. Alex stubbornly refused to answer, finally shouting that they were friends. Julian, exasperated, pinned him against the dining table and kissed him for a full 10 minutes, only breaking away when he was truly about to miss his flight. I'll deal with you when I get back, you little brat, he muttered, then lifted the hem of Alex's shirt and bit his waist. Alex, watching the tooth marks form on his skin, felt his eyes well up. He kicked and shoved Julian out the front door. He looked at the mark in the mirror. It wasn't a hard bite, but on his pale skin it was vivid. 10 minutes later, the impression had faded, leaving only a faint red circle. He took a picture of it and sent it to Julian. Alex, look what you did. It's all red. Julian, for God's sake, don't tempt me like that. Alex tossed his phone onto the sofa. Damn it. He saw right through me. The day Julian returned from his trip, he picked Alex up for the ADR session. Alex's recording went perfectly. Everyone was satisfied that his voice was an ideal fit for the character. But there was a problem with Julian's part. A scheduling conflict meant he wouldn't have time to record his lines. Jenna chewed her lip. Then we'll have to go back to the original plan and hire a voice actor. Alex can do his own lines. On the way home, Julian noticed Alex's quiet mood and put an arm around him, asking what was wrong. Alex admitted he was disappointed. Without Julian's real voice, the project felt incomplete. It was their first project together, possibly their last, and the one that brought them together. For it to be flawed felt significant. Julian didn't say anything, just kissed the top of his head. "Don't worry about me. I'll do my best work. I won't let you down," he added, "especially since Jenna called me your future brother-in-law today. I can't look bad in front of my little sister-in-law." A man has to protect his partner's honor. Living with Julian revealed just how relentlessly busy he was. It was a good month if Alex saw him for 10 days, and those were days Julian had to carve out of an impossible schedule. Alex, on the other hand, had little to do besides his ADR sessions. The series was short, so the recording work was finished quickly. The day he completed his final session, Julian flew back into town. Alex decided to meet him at the airport. He watched the crowd of fans gathered at arrivals with a sense of novelty and decided to join them. He was wearing a hat and a mask, dressed in a stylish outfit, feeling reasonably handsome. Though he was still largely unknown, his name had been attached to Julian's enough times that some people recognized his face. He had always heard that Julian's fans were remarkably polite and organized. Seeing them in person, he was curious. As he approached, the fans quietly shifted, making a space for him. He found it amusing how they clustered together. He spoke up, telling them he was also a fan there to greet Julian. The girl closest to him clutched her chest. "Dude, you scared me. I have a fear of ridiculously good-looking guys. You're too much." She relaxed when he said he was a fan. "Oh well, in that case, here." She handed him a sign. "You're tall. You hold it." She then asked if she could take a picture of him, saying she'd never seen a fan with his particular style before. Alex smiled, his eyes crinkling, and let her take the photo. She told him to hold the sign up high when Julian came out, to hit him in the face with his own handsomeness. As they were talking, a shout went up from the crowd. Alex looked up and saw Julian walking through the gate. The girl jabbed his arm. "Lift it." Alex shot the sign up over his head. At 6'1", he held it higher than anyone else. Julian's eyes immediately found it. His gaze shifted, and when he recognized Alex, he froze for a second before breaking into an unrestrained laugh. The fan next to Alex was ecstatic. "He saw you. He saw you. Oh my God." He laughed. Julian walked toward them, pointing discreetly toward the parking garage exit. Alex handed the sign back to the girl, smiled, and said he had to go. After saying a few words to his fans, Julian found Alex in the parking garage, leaning back in the driver's seat with his eyes closed. Julian opened the driver's side door, startling him. When Alex saw who it was, he relaxed back into his seat. Neither of them spoke. A moment later, Julian leaned in and kissed him on the lips. They were both wearing masks, and the sensation of kissing through 2 layers of fabric was strangely novel. "Miss me?" Julian asked. Alex shook his head. "Nope." Julian pressed a finger against Alex's masked mouth. "Liar." He then pushed his finger past Alex's lips, still through the mask. Alex looked up at him, his gaze hazy, and gently bit down on the finger. Back at the apartment, Julian went straight to bed and slept for hours. He looked years older from exhaustion. When he finally woke up, it was 6 in the evening. Alex called him for dinner, but Julian just pulled him onto the bed. "What are you doing?" Alex protested, planting a foot on Julian's shoulder to keep him at a distance. "Just a hug." Alex recognized the classic line from their show. He pressed his foot harder. In the series, that line was always the prelude to a frantic kissing scene. He shook his head. "No hugs." Julian considered this. "Then just a kiss. Please?" He wasn't even pretending to act anymore. Seeing Alex's unwavering resolve, he gave up and flopped down, pulling Alex into his arms. "Have you missed me at all this whole time?" "Nope," Alex grunted. He wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Not after seeing 2 more scandalous headlines about Julian while he was gone. He was a magnet for rumors. "But God, I missed you like hell. Sleeping alone in this cold bed has been miserable." He pressed his head against Julian's chest. "Get up. Dinner's getting cold." "Not until you say you missed me." "I missed you, all right?" But Julian pushed his luck. "How did you miss me?" If he wanted to play shameless, Alex could play too. He leaned in and whispered something in Julian's ear. Julian's eyes darkened, and he kissed him. They ate their cold dinner after showering. Then Julian announced he had work to do and left again. The reality of his schedule was becoming brutally clear. He didn't return until the middle of the night. The first night, Alex waited up. The second night, he couldn't. He was too exhausted. After 2 solid weeks of this, Alex was convinced Julian was wasting away. He forced him onto a scale and saw he'd lost 8 pounds. "You can't keep doing this," Alex pleaded. "You're sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. Your body is going to give out." Julian just hugged him and chuckled. "It's okay. The night work is done. I don't have to go out anymore. From now on, I'll be home to sleep with you. Okay?" Alex was skeptical, but when Julian was still home that afternoon, he started to believe him. That night, they opened a bottle of red wine with their steaks. They both drank a little too much, and one thing led to another. The next morning, Alex woke up feeling like his soul had been detached from his body. It was so much more complicated and exhausting than he'd ever imagined. The instructional videos were a lie. Julian brought him breakfast in bed, a bowl of congee. "Here, eat something." Alex lay face down on the pillow, the picture of misery. "You know what? Maybe you should go back to working at night. Better your life is ruined than mine." Julian laughed and bit his shoulder playfully. Alex slapped him on the chin. "My entire body is going to be covered in your bite marks." Julian just held him and laughed, clearly delighted. On the day the show premiered, Alex sat watching the screen, listening to Julian's voice through his headphones. Tears started to well in his eyes. Those late nights, the work Julian had to leave for, he had been re-recording his lines. Julian saw his unshed tears and pulled Alex onto his lap. "What's this? Are you that moved?" Alex wrapped his arms around Julian's neck, burying his face in his pajamas to hide his tears. "Let me see. Are you really crying?" Julian teased. "You're an absolute monster," Alex mumbled into his chest. "Forcing those poor people to work overtime every night. They must hate you." Julian chuckled. "I paid them 5 times their normal rate out of my own pocket. When we finished, they asked me to call them again if I ever had another job like this. Turns out money really does make the world go round." The first episode was a massive success. It exploded. Alex had never imagined this. He knew Julian's name would draw viewers, but their show was in a niche genre with mature themes. He'd hoped for a small, dedicated following. He never expected it to become a cultural phenomenon. For days, He wandered around his apartment like a headless chicken, completely overwhelmed. Soon, Leo and Chloe were pacing alongside him. Then, the head of his agency joined their frantic circle. Their original goal had been for the show to bump Alex from a complete unknown into a recognizable C-list actor. This was a different stratosphere. As they all stared at each other, on the verge of a collective nervous breakdown, Julian arrived. He laid out a series of binders on the conference table. "All right," he said. "Let's figure out your next steps and your short-term goals." The entire team from Alex's small agency sat like kindergartners, each clutching a binder, while Julian's manager walked them through the plan. Later that night, Alex learned that Julian's management company was owned by his family. When Julian heard about the chaos at Alex's agency, he'd simply had his own team draw up a comprehensive career plan and brought it over. His manager had apparently told him it wasn't his responsibility to manage Alex's career. Julian's response was simple: "She's the future boss's wife." His manager later confessed he thought the sky was falling, but then realized it was his own 6'4" boss who was supposed to be holding up the sky, and he was currently crouching on the ground for someone else. Alex clung to Julian's neck. "Why are you so good to me?" Julian bit his cheek gently. "And how are you going to repay me for being so good to you?" "I could offer myself to you," Alex whispered. Julian whispered back, "Haven't you already?" "A beat. Does that mean the offer is off the table from now on, husband?" Alex watched Julian's eyes turn red with emotion. Then he was being lifted into the air, and he knew it was going to be another sleepless night. Looking back, he was so incredibly grateful that he'd dragged himself to that audition, even though he'd been sick that day. The first time he saw Julian, he had looked at him from across the room and told himself with absolute certainty, "He is going to be mine." Then he'd promptly fainted into Julian's arms.